Hey, welcome to the Greatest Voyage podcast, where we sail through the grand line of discussion. The next topic island the log post is pointing to is the subject of the straw hats and the power balance of the crew. So this is something I've always wanted to talk about because I always found it so interesting how crews in One Piece, how they're structured. If you look at the Beast Pirates or the Big Mom Pirates or even the Red Hair Pirates, even though we don't know that much about them, or somebody like the Blackbeard Pirates, or even the Marines, how the Marines are structured, and I'm not talking about positions, but rather how they're structured in terms of power. So we're just going to dive into this a little bit. So with the Straw Hats, their power structure is pretty interesting. So Oda, just in the story, he's pretty fascinated by the number 3, it seems. So you'll see a lot of things in pairs of 3. So you got the 3 admirals, you got the 3 all-stars of the Beast Pirates, you got the 3 sweet commanders of the Big Mom Pirates, even though it was 4 commanders originally. When we saw them, it was only 3. You got the 3 ancient weapons, you got the 3 types of hockey, you got the 3 types of devil fruits, and so on and so forth. So Oda does a lot of the time like to put things in pairs of 3s, and the Straw Hats were no exception, at least up until Jinbei came. So before Jinbei, you had the Straw Hats in 3 groups of 3. You got the weak trio, quote unquote weak, because of course they're strong, but weak in comparison to the other members of the crew. So you got the weak trio, which would be Chopper, Usopp, and Nami. You got the mid trio, which would be Robin, Frankie, and Brook. And then you got the monster trio, or the strong trio, but we call them the monster trio, which would be Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji. Now, out of all these trios, when people talking about them as a trio, Zoro, Sanji, and Luffy, the monster trio, get the most attention and the most discussion surrounding them, because lots of times people don't think of the other 2 as a trio, but I think most people, if you were just to tell them, would you agree that Usopp, Nami, and Chopper, in whatever order you're talking about, are the weakest of the Straw Hats? However, whichever order you be putting that in, somebody would probably say, well, yes, they are. But then if you say Brook, Frankie, Robin, whatever way you're putting those guys in, like whatever order, do you think they're stronger than the last 3 I mentioned? You're probably gonna get the answer yes. And then of course if you say Zoro, Sanji, Luffy, most people are gonna say they're stronger than everybody else in the crew. So the power balance is pretty interesting, because even though you got these trios, it's not like they're equal. It's like a tier almost, like high tier, mid tier, low tier in terms of the crew. So I'm not saying that Zoro, Luffy, and Sanji are all equal, or Robin, Frankie, and Brook are all equal. Even though with the mid trio, Robin, Brook, and Frankie are all very, very close, and same with the weak trio. I feel like the power gaps are the most in the monster trio, even though those power gaps aren't even as big as people make them out to be. So I'm gonna just talk about the monster trios first. So you got the monster trio, which is Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji, obviously, and as a whole, everybody says Luffy's the strongest, because he obviously is the strongest. He's the main character and the captain of the crew. Of course he's going to be the strongest, even though you do get a few of the outlying fanboys of Zoro saying Zoro is stronger than Luffy. I'm gonna just say it right here, that's not the case. In terms of the power balance of the crew, Luffy is at the top of the food chain. He is the strongest. He is the captain. He is the main character. He is the soon-to-be Pirate King. Luffy is the strongest in the crew and the strongest of the monster trio. But where most of the dog and cat fighting happens is Zoro and Sanji. The Zoro fans, the Zoro fanboys, the Zoro, or maybe just normal fans who advocate for Zoro, versus the Sanji army, which is honestly not super big, because most people say that Zoro is stronger than Sanji. And I agree. There is Zoro, how do you put this? Sanji is not stronger than Zoro, and probably never will be. So I will see a lot of people who get really annoyed by, as we call them, Zorotards, because sometimes Zorotards will go way too far, hyping up Zoro and gassing him up to the point it just becomes annoying for a lot of us other fans when they say stuff like, Zoro will solo Kaido. Come on. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that EOS Zoro can probably solo Kaido. I'm not going to say he can't. But this Zoro right here is not soloing Kaido. He's not. That's just not going to happen. So statements like that and gassing Zoro up like that will make a lot of people mad. And then you got these Sanji fanboys who are like, no, Sanji is as strong as Zoro. Or stronger than Zoro even. No, he's not. Sanji is not stronger than Zoro. Probably never will be. They're not even equal. Sanji's always going to be a little bit behind Zoro. And now, I'm not a Sanji hater. Sanji is actually my third favorite character in the entire series. Zoro's not even in my top 10. I love Sanji. I think he's awesome. I think he's cool. I think he's great. I love the whole thing about him not kicking women, even though it does get annoying sometimes. I love the whole concept of him not using his hands and just using kicks. That's just an interesting concept that never would have occurred to me personally, and I don't think it would have occurred to that many people. And Sanji is just a man who stands by his morals no matter what, not using his hands while fighting, not kicking women, stuff like that. So I do really like Sanji as a character, and I think he's a great fighter. But as it stands, he's just not going to top Zoro, and probably never even going to completely close the gap. But on the flip side, Zoro fans, or Zoro haters, or Sanji haters, or just fans who got the wrong idea, sometimes take it way too far. So sometimes they think the power gap between Sanji and Zoro is much bigger than it actually is, in my opinion. So I'll see people saying, it's okay if Sanji isn't as strong as Zoro. Zoro is a fighter. Sanji is a cook. And pre-time skip, they were pretty close in power. But post-time skip, the power gap is extremely big. Because Zoro got trained by Mihawk, Dracu stinking Mihawk. But Sanji just ran away from Okama. So I can kind of see why one would say that, but that is not the case. So, from the Sea Barati arc, Sanji was always portrayed as close to Zoro, and he always fought the third strongest enemy, while Zoro fought the second strongest and Luffy fought the first. You go to Arlong Park, Sanji was fighting Karubi. You go to Alabasta, Sanji was fighting Mr. 2, while Zoro was fighting Hachi, and he was fighting Mr. 1. In the Skypia arc, I don't remember his name, but you know who I'm talking about. That angel dude that Sanji fought was basically the third strongest. And at Enna's lobby, Sanji fought the third strongest. Jabra at Fishman Island, I believe Sanji fought the third strongest. I actually can't remember that much about Fishman Island right now. I apologize for that, but I'm pretty sure he fought the third strongest on Fishman Island. I really need to rewatch the arc. But even if he didn't, pre-time skip, Sanji has just been always fighting the third strongest. And even to a degree, post-time skip, but not really. Because post-time skip arcs have been different. Because at Punk Hazard, there wasn't really commanders, if you will. At Dressrosa, Sanji fought with Doflamingo a little bit and dipped. He wasn't in the thick of it in Dressrosa, so that's partially why people are saying that, but that's not going to be the case. The power balance of the monster trio is always going to be Sanji at the bottom by a little bit, Zoro a little bit ahead of him, and Luffy a little bit ahead of Zoro, like not too far ahead, but not too close either, in my opinion. They're always going to be close. Like, it's probably always going to be a high difficulty fight, but I don't think it's ever going to be, like, extreme difficulty for Luffy. Probably just always high difficulty. And for Zoro and Sanji, I think it kind of depends whether it's extreme or high difficulty. I think end of series, it's going to be extreme difficulty, but what I'm saying is, even though Sanji's a cook, even though he's not a quote-unquote, like, portrayed fighter, he has always been somebody who, despite it not being his goal, was a super strong fighter. And that's just always been how he is. And you can even see, post-time skip, when they first met, they were fighting. And obviously that's not much to go off of, because obviously they're not going to actually go all out on each other. But that still was a little bit of portrayal. And I feel like a lot of the reasons people say that Sanji, post-time skip, is not, like, close to Zoro in the power balance, and that Zoro is so much farther, is because of the things he's done. So he was kind of having trouble with Virgo. Now, I believe that Sanji probably could have taken Virgo out for some specific reasons. I'm not going to go over all of them right now. Maybe in a later episode, I'll talk about why I believe Sanji would have extreme difficulty beat Virgo. But point is, he was having trouble with Virgo. At Whole Cake Island, he wasn't beating everybody up. And at Dressrosa, Doflamingo was going pretty heavy on him, and he clearly was having a lot of trouble with Doflamingo, and Doflamingo was about to trash him. So basically, they're saying Sanji has taken so many L's. Zoro has taken, like, no L's this entire time skip. But that's because Zoro also hasn't really done anything. Like, people will be talking about how Sanji is so weak, he's taken so many L's, but Zoro, he hasn't done much. He hasn't really fought opponents. So when time skip started, people were saying after Fishman Island, Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji need to take L's. They were even saying this pre-time skip. They're like, they need to take L's. This is the new world. They can't be special anymore. But as soon as they started not being special, people started complaining. Like, even in One Piece chapter 980, I'm not going to say too much because of spoilers, but there was an altercation, and a couple members of the monster trio did take some heavy damage, and people were calling them trash, but they were also saying how they can't be special anymore just a couple years ago, and how they need to take more L's. So that's a little bit of an inconsistency in logic. But here's the thing, even though Sanji was having trouble against Virgo, let me talk about Virgo first. Virgo is not somebody that is trash. Now, Virgo, the problem with Virgo is, I'm gonna be honest here, Virgo is that guy that everybody dislikes, or not everybody, a lot of people dislike, and they don't want him to be strong. So they try really, really, really hard to find out a reason he's not strong. And the reason for that is because of the whole Sanji incident. They don't want Sanji to be weak. So they're like, Virgo is trash, Sanji could have beat him, and they really, really, really try to drag him down so he won't be strong. I don't know why Virgo is somebody people want to not be strong. If I'm being honest, there was a time period where I really, really didn't want Virgo to be strong, and I was trying to drag him down too. I guess there's just something about Virgo that triggers people. But here's the thing I realized. Virgo is the right-hand man of Don Quixote Doflamingo. And now Doflamingo is somebody I believe could probably take out Cracker. Somebody kind of around the third, second commander level. So if he has a right hand, his right hand is gonna be really, really strong. And Virgo's also a very strong vice admiral, don't forget, or was. So Virgo, being the right hand man of somebody that strong, somebody who's around third or second commander level, it makes sense that Virgo is around the quote-unquote fourth commander level, around that tier, because Sanji, post-time skip, I believe, without the raid suit, is around 4th commander level, because we've seen him with Oven and Daifuku, who we can only assume are only a little bit weaker than Snack, who was a 4th commander. I think Sanji was probably around Snack level, because I think he would have been able to take out Oven or Daifuku in an elongated fight. So the fact that Virgo is as strong as Sanji isn't a big deal, because Virgo, right-hand man of Don Quixote Doflamingo, of course he's going to be strong. Of course he's going to be very, very strong and be one of the higher tiers in the story. Now, as I said, I believe that Sanji would have taken that fight extreme difficulty in a lot of scenarios. Of course, there would be some scenarios that Virgo would pull off, but I believe that Sanji probably would have taken the fight in an extreme scenario or extreme difficulty, but obviously that's just conjecture. But point is, even if he would have lost at extreme difficulty, Virgo was the right-hand man of Doflamingo. Of course, he's going to be strong. And then Sanji, as I said, at Whole Cake Island, this is a Yonko crew. Of course, Sanji is going to be having trouble. And he was fighting against the higher tiers of the crew, like Oven and Daifuku. He was giving them smoke. You know what I mean? So people saying that Sanji and Zoro have a huge power gap now doesn't make much sense, because all Zoro has done, the biggest thing he has done, is cut up Pika. Sanji could have taken out Pika, I'm pretty sure. Maybe some people would disagree with me, but Sanji would definitely take out Pika, in my opinion. Because Pika, while being strong, that's just somebody Sanji would have been able to take out, especially with his speed. Now, in Wano, with the raid suit, switching back to the other side of the spectrum, saying that Sanji and Zoro are the same strength, or stronger. Sure, when Sanji got the raid suit, maybe he was equal to Zoro, and I'm saying maybe, heavy maybe. Maybe he was equal to Zoro and not a little bit behind. But that doesn't matter, because by the time we see them fight, Zoro would have widened the gap to that little degree again when he masters Emma or something, and Zoro would once again be a little bit stronger than Sanji, even though Sanji has the raid suit. I don't think that really matters whether or not Sanji was equal to Zoro with raid suit right now, because by the time we see them fight, Zoro was going to have widened the gap again if Sanji ever even closed that up, which I think he probably did, honestly, because to grow, you have to close the gap, widen it, because both are getting stronger and stronger and stronger. So that's basically all I have to say about the monster trio and the power balance. I'm just reinstating that this is Zoro, Sanji, Luffy, Sanji at the bottom, Zoro in the middle, Luffy at the top, probably forever. Maybe EOS, Sanji versus Zoro is going to be an extreme difficulty battle, or Luffy versus Zoro, something like that. But just as a general rule of thumb, there's always going to be at least these small gaps separating all of them. I believe that Zoro and Sanji, there's always going to be a small gap. They're never going to be able to trash one another. It's always going to be a difficult fight. But in the end, I think Zoro's going to be over Sanji, Luffy's going to be over Zoro. So that's basically all I have to say about the monster trio. Basically, I was just ranting about the power dynamics between Sanji and Zoro, and how post-time skip, I don't think that Zoro is much stronger than Sanji. If Zoro and Sanji were to fight high diff, I think it would come out to the same thing, because we haven't even seen Zoro do anything to warrant the belief that the power gap is so much higher. So, next, let's talk about the mid trio, and at the end of this video, I will be discussing Jinbei, and what I think is going to be the advent of a fourth trio, which is going to be, I guess, maybe the quote-unquote strong trio. But let's talk about the mid trio real quick. So, Brook, Robin, and Frankie. Now, Brook has the sauce. Like, at Whole Cake Island, you know, that whole thing, his devil fruit has a lot of potential, like how he made that whole manifestation of his soul, scaring all the homies, all the cold winds of the underworld stuff, like the ice swordsmanship. Brook is pretty strong. You got Frankie, the cyborg, and Robin with her devil fruit, Gigantus, Monos. I never really quite figured out how to say that, to be honest. But you know, when she makes the ginormous limbs the size of a whole giant to stomp or punch somebody, stuff like that. So the mid trio, there's not really much to say about them with the power dynamics between them, because they're hard to rank, because the mid trio, I feel like all of them will push each other to extreme difficulty, and I'm not sure I can necessarily rank them. If I had to do a ranking right now, I'd probably say Robin at the top, Brook in the middle, Frankie at the bottom, but very, very tentatively, because all of them have such close, different powers and abilities that are so different from each other, and they're all so adept at it, and they're all so good with it. I feel like they'd all push each other to extreme difficulty, and in any specific scenario, one of them could win against one of the other two. So, like, Robin, I feel like just in general, probably is going to be the strongest, because of Gigantus Monos, you know, the thousands of hands she can sprout and all of that. And then Brook, he's got his ice swordsmanship, right? And all the potential his soul devil fruit has is insane. I actually made a video on that on my YouTube theory channel if you want to check that out. But Brook, his devil fruit definitely does have a lot of potential. And right now, even if he doesn't seem that strong sometimes to people, like, he has a lot of abilities. He's really good with the swordsmanship. He's got the ice stuff. He's got all that soul manipulation power. And then with Frankie, obviously, he's got Frankie Radical Beam, the upgraded cyborgness, all the armor, all of that stuff, Vegapunk's tech inside his body. So, the mid trio, there's really not much to say on them. It would probably... like, yeah, there's not much to say on them. They're just kind of the mid-trio. They're all so close. You can't really rank them or talk about power dynamics. Or, like, nobody's really arguing vehemently Frankie versus Brook like they are Zoro versus Sanji or anything like that. It's just like the mid-trio. If somebody said that Frankie was the strongest of the mid-trio, I would disagree, but I wouldn't necessarily be like, you're stupid for thinking that. I'd be like, I could see how that could be the case. I see where you're coming from. Same if they said Brook was the strongest, or Robin was the strongest. I could see where they are coming from. The mid-trio is just kind of somebody hard to discuss, because they're all so strong, and all so close in power. But now, let's talk about the weak trio, which will be Chopper, Nami, and Usopp. Now, the weak trio is also very, very hard to discuss. But if I had to rank them, a they're really hard because you got Nami, who's got the climate talked, and with the introduction of Zeus, that is very, very, very strong. She's got a whole Yonko cloud, right? And does a lot of powerful lightning damage. But Usopp is pretty underrated. He's got this strong observation hockey now that he hasn't quite mastered, but he has it. He's good at sniping, and his pop green stuff, his pop green is a lot more powerful than people give it credit for. Like, all the Straw Hats are Vice Admiral tier, even though that's not saying a lot, I guess, because Vice Admirals are so diverse. You got anywhere between, like, the Admiral level Aokiji, and then to Maynard. Like, you know, Maynard, the guy that got trashed by Bartolomeo. But, like, they're all strong. So Pop Green, Impact Wolf. Usopp legit shoots out a giant tree wolf that does a shockwave from its nose on impact. Like a whole shockwave. That's pretty powerful. And he does all these plants that come out of the ground and trip you up. Or all these explosive, flammable, like all sorts of plants. All this Pop Green. It's pretty interesting, super diverse, and very powerful. And then you got Chopper with all of his points. You know, like Kung Fu Point, even though I know a lot of people don't like Kung Fu Point, but for me, it's all good. And he can control Monster Point to a degree for a little bit. So that's pretty cool. Control Monster Point is definitely something very powerful. He's got Horn Point and like Defense Point. He has all of these different points for his Devil Fruit. So Chopper is also pretty strong. But if I had to rank them, they're kind of like the mid trio, I guess. They're all so strong. Like, if anybody says Nami's the strongest out of the weak trio, I get that. If they say Usopp's the strongest, I get that. If they say Chopper's the strongest, I get that. I think they'd all push each other to high difficulty. Because, like, say Chopper goes in the Monster Point, Nami can completely Zeus him, and he wouldn't get taken down, but, like, that would do a lot of damage, and if he hits Nami, it's kind of over for her. Nami would have to be able to be agile enough to stay out of the way. And Usopp now is definitely somebody who can take damage. You see by the muscles and all the abuse he took on the Bon Archipelago, all the physical training and all of that. He's swole now, so I guess if I had to say, I'd say that Chopper, Usopp, and then Nami. Because Nami right now, she's kind of like a glass cannon. So the power dynamics of the weak trio, I'd say Chopper, Usopp, Nami. Because Chopper, he can take a lot of damage. He is pretty durable. He's a reindeer human, or human reindeer, I guess. He's got all these different points, so his points can be used for agility, escaping, turning into Monster Point if he needs to completely smash somebody up real quick. He's got, you know, Kung Fu Point, Ball Point, like Arm Point. He's got the hoof attacks. So Chopper is very diverse. He has a lot, and I mean a lot, of attack damage, a lot of damage, and he has very, very good durability. And even he like, I'm pretty sure Big Mom punched him, he went into Ball Point, and he was actually able to take that. So I'm gonna put Chopper as the, like I just say, in the power dynamics, Chopper's probably gonna be the strongest. Then with Usopp, he's probably got the worst attack abilities of all of them. Like, Pop Green does a lot of damage and a lot of attack, I guess, but out of just the three of them, I'd say that Usopp's probably the least. Even though that's not to say it's low, it's just the least. But the reason I put Usopp over Nami is because Nami is kind of a glass cannon, if that makes sense. Like, she's got Zeus, she's got the Climate Talked, very, very, very big, mad damage. But Nami has very low durability. Like, she's pretty agile, she can run, and she did take those hits from Khalifa at Enna's lobby pre-time skip, but she wasn't really training her physical aspects, more her mind and her knowledge of the weather, and she used that to be able to use her Climate Talk better, but she was more training her brain than her body. So Nami is kind of a glass cannon, because if Chopper hits her with Monster Point, it's over. Or like Hoof Rosio or something, maybe she'll be able to stand up from that, but she'll be very, very, very damaged. She can do a lot of damage, but she takes an insane amount of damage, because she's not really superhuman or anything. But with Usopp, he did do a lot of training on the Bon Boyne Archipelago, I think it actually was, and he's very muscular, he's very fit, he can tank a lot of damage, and he does do a lot of damage, so I'll put Usopp over Nami, just because he can tank more damage than her. But, as I said, I could see why anybody would put any of them over the others, so the power dynamics that the Straw Hats, it's just like you got the weak trio, which are all very close, you got the mid trio, which are all very close, and then you got the monster trio, which are all very close, but there's a very clear hierarchy. So I do find that interesting in the topic of the power dynamics of the Straw Hats. So that's just something that was always interesting to me, just how the Straw Hats are, how they're split up, how they're different trios, and how all those trios have kind of a different dynamic with each other in terms of power, because the weak trio, they're always scared, they're always screaming, you'll notice, but lots of times they're screaming. They actually do have the power to defend themselves. They're just kind of babies about it. And then you got the mid trio, who know their limits, but they're people who would go against the pace of the danger. They're not usually gonna scream, even though Brooke sometimes does do that. But like, the mid trio, they know their own strength, they know their limits, but they're still brave, they're still willing to use that strength, they're still willing to go against opponents that they know they could never beat, just like Brooke went against Big Mom. Now, I'm not saying that Chopper or Usopp or Nami wouldn't go against Big Mom if they really got called upon, because I know Stampede isn't like canon, but Usopp did attack Douglas Bullet and stuff like that. But just in general, first they're gonna run away, and then obviously the monster trio, they're always gonna try to fight because they're so confident in their own abilities, and they really do think they're the kind of people who think they can beat anybody until they're proven otherwise. So that's just kind of the power dynamics of the crew. But now let's talk about Jinbei. Jinbei is the 10th member, and he kind of throws this dynamic, I guess, off. But I actually don't necessarily think, though. I think Jinbei is the member of the quote-unquote strong trio. So I think eventually you're gonna have the monster trio, Luffy, Zoro, Sanji. Then you got the strong trio, Jinbei, X, and X. Then the mid trio and the weak trio. Now I think some of the mid trio will probably move up to the strong trio as powers develop and things move on. But here's the thing. So Jinbei, the 10th member. Now, I know a lot of people think he's stronger than Zoro or stronger than Sanji, and that may be true, but as time goes on, the monster trio, I'm pretty sure is going to surpass them, because the monster trio is a lot of young men with a lot more potential. Jinbei is older, he's reaching the max of his potential. That's not to say he can't get stronger, but he's really maxed out a lot on his potential. He's probably around the level of somebody like Doflamingo, which I believe the monster trio are all around that level, are stronger, but the monster trio will eventually eclipse that, and Jinbei might even get like to the tier of like second or even first commander, but eventually I think that he's just not going to keep up with the monster trio, and they're going to get stronger than him. So who would be the 2 members to keep the 3 thing going? Because I don't know if Oda plans to go with the trio thing forever, but obviously I think most people can agree that Carrot is probably going to join the crew. So say Carrot joins the crew. There's one thing about the Straw Hats I always noticed, and that would be that there are no Logies on the crew. So the Straw Hats, they're just people you always assume would kind of get people of every race and devil fruit on the crew, on the team. So I know a lot of people might be like, what about the Giants or the Long Arms or the Long Legs? If you look at the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, you got a Giant, you got a Long Arm, you got a Long Leg. So those guys probably aren't going to end up pulling up on the main ship of the Straw Hats. Probably not a Giant or a Long Arm or a Long Leg, because those are already in the Grand Fleet. But if you just assume Carrot is joining, then you got a Mink. And then if you have a Logia on the crew, I think that will kind of balance a lot of things out. And what Logia might join the crew? And for that, I know a lot of people might say Caesar, but no, Caesar is trash. Like, Caesar, I know the Straw Hats are forgiving, because I know, like, in Water 7, Frankie, he had his guys beat up Usopp. He kicked Usopp in the face, taunted him, called him horrible names, called him trash, and told his guys that they could quote-unquote have fun with Usopp, aka beat him up to their heart's content. So Frankie was not the nicest guy, and I know he got forgiven. But with Caesar, he's literally killing children. And he's just kind of an evil person, self-absorbed, a narcissist. Caesar should never join the crew, and they're probably never gonna really forgive him for that. Like, Chopper! Chopper was so mad at Caesar. Why would they let Caesar on the true crew? Even if Caesar does have a dream and fits all the requirements, I don't believe Caesar's gonna do that. The Loki I think will probably join the crew is Caribou. Now I know a lot of people might be like, Caribou, are you serious? That guy? But here's the thing, Caribou is somebody who was kind of trash in Sabaody Archipelago and Fishman Island and like pretty weak. Peckham's was like, you Logias think you're so invincible, then just beat him up with hockey and stuff like that. But that's the thing, Caribou has a very strong devil fruit, and because he's so naive, young, and stupid, there's a lot of room for change. He has a lot of room for growth, and I mean a lot of room for growth. And somebody like Caribou, like, he'd probably get affected by the Straw Hats and grow to really, really like them, and probably kind of change his ways just by the example of the Straw Hats and how he's drawn to them. Caribou is somebody who's been set up for that, because Caribou, who we all thought was going to be some irrelevant character that we'd never see again after Sabaody, is in Wano Kuni right now, and he was at the prison, so I believe that means that Oda does have some kind of plan for him, so I really would not be surprised if he joined the crew. So say, just for sake of discussion, Carrot and Caribou joined the crew. I feel like things would shift. So maybe Jinbei and like Brooke and Robin would be the quote-unquote strong trio, because like Robin and Brooke got stronger, and then you got Carrot, Caribou, and Frankie as the mid trio, and then Usopp, Nami, and Chopper as the weak trio. Like, I just feel like with Jinbei, even though he's here, that's not really gonna upset the balance too much, because I feel like when other crew members join, they're going to cancel that out, and they're gonna make a fourth trio of sorts. Now, I know a lot of people are saying that Sanji will never eclipse Jinbei. Jinbei's the new member of the monster trio, and Sanji has to sit back. I don't believe so. I believe that Sanji is going to overtake Jinbei very soon, if he hasn't overtaken him already. I believe Sanji and Jinbei are kind of equal. Zoro's a little bit stronger. Luffy's at the top still. That's just my personal opinion. I know a lot of people will be mad at me for saying that, but that's just kind of what I'm thinking right now as of the moment. So that's basically really all of the talking I have to do on the power balances of the Straw Hat. So basically, Monster Trio is still Sanji, Zoro, Luffy, forever. Then you got the mid trio. Then you got the weak trio, which really the power dynamics there are kind of hard to pinpoint. But then with Jinbei, I think as new members join the crew like Carrot and maybe Caribou, or maybe even Caesar, hopefully not Caesar, but like say even Caesar did, or something like that. Like, as time goes on, you're gonna get the strong trio in between the mid and monster trio, or something like that, because, you know, power dynamics really are interesting. If you just look at them in each individual crew, like Yonko crews, or even the whole ginormous crew that is known as the Navy, or even the Don Quixote pirate crew, like, power dynamics are just always so interesting. Well, I hope y'all enjoyed this episode of the Greatest Voyage podcast. I really enjoyed talking about it, and yeah, well, I'll see you people on the Grand Line in the open seas later on.